ABC called it entertainment. Critics called it violence overload. Two detectives tearing through the streets of fictional Bay City turned prime time into a war zone, and America couldn't look away. It was the mid-70s. Trust was gone. The country was angry, cynical, and ready for heroes who didn't play by the rules. But behind the car chases and buddy banter was something darker: controversy, censorship, and a network on the edge of collapse. This is the story of Starsky and Hutch, the show that pushed television past its breaking point.
No, wait! Don't fire! Ah!
By the mid-1970s, ABC was struggling to keep up. Rival network CBS dominated the Nielsen Top 20, and ABC's lineup looked tame next to the raw, handheld realism taking over movie theaters in Serpico, Dirty Harry, and The French Connection. The network wanted something grittier, faster, and more human. Television that felt like the street outside. They turned to William Blinn, a seasoned writer who'd built his reputation on Rawhide, Gunsmoke, Bonanza, and The Rookies. Blinn understood the human side of heroism, the cracks, the fatigue, the moral gray. He wasn't interested in clean-cut cops who solved everything by the final act. He wanted people under pressure. Producers Aaron Spelling and Leonard Goldberg gave Blinn the freedom to develop something different from the standard police drama. The result was an original made-for-TV movie that introduced two young cops who blended street smarts with empathy. A partnership built as much on friendship as on solving crimes. His goal wasn't spectacle, it was connection. Two flawed detectives navigating chaos with humor, heart, and just enough rebellion to make middle America uncomfortable. Casting these two men would make or break everything.
And we tried. Someone flushes. Yeah, well, you and me can be thankful that we're a couple of bugs and not a swim.
Paul Michael Glaser, best known for his role in the feature film Fiddler on the Roof, was hesitant from the start. ABC had been after him to do a series, but he kept turning them down. When the Starsky and Hutch pilot script came along, he only agreed to read for it after a long dry spell between projects, and even then, he didn't think it would amount to anything. Glaser later recalled thinking the show felt a little cliched, and that he wasn't particularly good in it. He was convinced it would never go to series.
The Tallman trial has nothing to do with this. That's right. The whole thing, backing each other up, corroborating evidence, that's all hogwash. That was all a front, just to get rid of the girl.
But to his surprise, audiences and executives saw something else. The chemistry with David Soul jumped off the screen, as suddenly Glaser found himself starring in a show he'd assumed would never get made. David Soul, best known from Here Come the Brides, had studied political science prior to acting and worked as a folk singer, learning to follow the moment, as he later put it. That quiet idealism shaped how he saw Starsky and Hutch. Not just a cop show, but a story about two people doing a hard job with humor and compassion. At first, though, Soul wasn't sure he even wanted the part. Fresh off Magnum Force, he admitted he thought television was a little beneath him. He found Hutch kind of vanilla and actually wanted to play Starsky. But once he auditioned with Paul Michael Glaser, who spent the scene cracking walnuts, everything clicked.
Van, what do I say to a lady who left me because she thought being married to a cop held no future?
Bernie Hamilton joined the cast as Captain Harold Doby, the tough, by-the-book superior who kept Starsky and Hutch in line. The character was notable at the time. A black police captain commanding two white detectives, something still rare on American television in 1975. Hamilton, a Korean War veteran, brought a quiet authority shaped by years in films like One Potato, Two Potato, and The Devil at 4 o'clock.
We're a nation of laws, and the sooner you young officers learn to separate yourself from the emotionalism of believing that justice is based on right and wrong, the further you're going to go in this department.
Rounding out the cast was Antonio Fargas as Huggy Bear, the detective's streetwise informant and occasional voice of reason. Fargas had already made a name for himself in early 70s urban crime dramas like Shaft and Cleopatra Jones, and he brought that same charisma to the role. On screen, Huggy provided humor, charm, and a moral compass when Starsky and Hutch blurred the line between right and wrong. He wasn't just comic relief, he was part of the show's heartbeat, bridging the cops and the community they served.
His mother.
Yeah, came out here a couple of months ago from Cleveland. Syndicate heavyweight said if he could take hold of the territory, they'd make him their main man out here.
ABC's reaction to the pilot was cautious. The story leaned gritty and urban, closer to the headlines of the 1970s than network's usually primetime fare. Before taking it to series, ABC asked the producers to lighten the tone, adding humor and warmth to balance the grit of the original TV movie. When Starsky and Hutch aired on April 30, 1975, it struck a chord. Viewers responded to more than the action. They saw a friendship with uncommon depth for a cop show. That chemistry between Paul Michael Glaser and David Soul became the show's heartbeat, and ABC ordered a full season that fall. From the moment that red and white Ford Torino roared onto the screen, Starsky and Hutch stopped being just another cop show. It became a statement. That car, bright red, slashed with a white lightning stripe, wasn't subtle. It didn't blend in, and that was the point. The car quickly earned its now iconic nickname, the Striped Tomato. The bright red Ford Grand Torino, first dubbed the Striped Tomato by Hutch in the Season 1 episode of Snowstorm, became a character in its own right. Behind the scenes, Paul Michael Glaser reportedly coined the phrase himself after joking that the car looked like a striped tomato. But neither star loved it. Glaser hated the Torino's bulky handling, while David Soul joked that it was more famous than any one of us. Still, that oversized, high-contrast design made it unforgettable. The car gave the series its visual heartbeat. Flashy, defiant, impossible to ignore. The production leaned into authenticity. Instead of polished studio backlots, Starsky and Hutch filmed across real Los Angeles neighborhoods, alleys, storefronts, and ports that gave the series a tangible sense of place. Shooting under the California sun lended a brightness that contrasted with its darker storylines. That realism extended to the writing.
I got the front.
Many of the early storylines were inspired by actual Los Angeles crimes, giving the show a grit that set it apart from safer network fare. Blinn drew inspiration from two real New York detectives, Lou Tolano and John Seppi, known for their undercover disguises and unconventional tactics. The resemblance was so strong that the pair later sued ABC in Spelling Goldberg Productions, and won a small settlement. The show's visuals carried echoes of the new Hollywood style dominating cinema at the time. Fast-paced chases, rough-cut edits, and a looser, more energetic feel than the typical stage-bound police dramas that preceded it. The tone reflected the decade's appetite for realism, drawing clear inspiration from the gritty crime films of the early 70s. These weren't clean heroes. They were flawed men trying to stay decent in a messy city. The music sealed the identity. The first season theme by Lalo Schifrin, followed by later versions by Tom Scott and others, brought a jazz-funk energy to television that was instantly recognizable. The rhythm wasn't militaristic or triumphant. It moved with the pulse of the streets, all brass, bass, and groove. Long before Starsky and Hutch made him a household name, David Soul was chasing a different kind of spotlight. In the mid-1960s, he worked the folk circuit in the Midwest performing as the covered man, masked to keep audiences focused on his songs rather than his face. He even appeared on the Merv Griffin show wearing a ski mask as the covered man, telling audiences he wanted to be judged for his music, not his looks. That stunt got him noticed, and soon producers were calling. Guest roles followed on Flipper, Star Trek, and The Streets of San Francisco. Steady work that eventually led to Starsky and Hutch. When the show exploded, so did his music. In 1976, Don't Give Up on Us hit number 1 on both US and UK charts, selling over 1 million copies. A year later, Silver Lady topped the British charts too. turning soul into an unlikely pop idol. At the height of Starsky and Hutch mania, soul was playing packed venues and appearing on Top of the Pops, the rare actor-musician whose two careers ran in parallel, not one chasing the other. Glazer later teased Soul about his pop star image, and the show's music actor crossover helped boost his profile overseas. Success, however, came with a cost. By diving headfirst into 1970s realism, Starsky and Hutch became a lightning rod in America's growing panic over television violence. A 1977 Washington Post story reported that the series was the most violent show on network TV, and producer Aaron Spelling publicly vowed to take the violence out of the show entirely. The Backlash was part of a national movement. The American Medical Association, National Citizens Committee for Broadcasting, and National Parent-Teacher Association all targeted violent programming, while ABC's own president, Frederick S. Pierce, issued a blunt order to producers: no more violence. Period, period, period. Writers and directors suddenly found themselves under incredible pressure to tone down their scripts. By the later seasons, the rough edges were gone. What began as a raw, street-level cop drama had been softened to meet new standards. Inside the production, frustration simmered. Paul Michael Glazer pushed for stories with moral depth, not just another chase ending in gunfire and broken glass. But the more the show tried to satisfy both the network and the critics, the more it lost the grit that had made it a phenomenon. For all its flash and firepower, the real core of Starsky and Hutch wasn't the car, it was the chemistry. What made the show stand out wasn't the shootouts or the chases. It was a believable partnership between two men who trusted each other completely. Glazer's Starsky brought restless energy and streetwise toughness. Soul's Hutch balanced it with a calm, thoughtful presence. Together, they gave the series a sense of authenticity that went beyond the typical buddy cop setup. Contemporary viewers noted how natural their dynamic felt. A 1976 People profile described their camaraderie as remarkably warm and believable, and later retrospectives credited that realism as one of the show's lasting strengths. At a time when television heroes were often one-dimensional, Starsky and Hutch offered something different. Two flawed, decent men trying to do good in a city that didn't always make that easy. That sense of mutual respect and humanity is what kept audiences watching long after the car chases ended.
We get 20 possibles and 3 primes. It's not our fault if they all wash out.
They didn't all wash out. Vic Bellamy didn't wash out. He was a...
Vic Bellamy only had a 10th grade education. How the hell did he get the smarts to pull something like this off?
That same intensity that made Starsky and Hutch thrilling on-screen made it punishing behind the scenes. Episodes were filmed on an unforgiving 7-day schedule, with the cast finishing one episode and starting the next almost immediately. There was no downtime, no chance to refine scripts or explore character depth. According to David Soul, the scripts were often rewritten on the fly, sometimes bearing little resemblance to the original drafts by the time cameras rolled. That relentless pace forced both leads to improvise, adding humor and human touches to keep the material from going flat. But the grind wore them down. Glazer, in particular, grew frustrated that the show kept leaning on car chases and gunfights instead of character-driven stories. As national criticism over TV violence intensified, ABC began nudging the series towards lighter, more comedic territory. The raw edge that once defined the show started to fade, replaced by a safer, more conventional tone. For longtime fans, that change felt like the real loss. At its peak during the 1975-76 season, Starsky and Hutch ranked among television's elite, tying for 15th place in the Nielsen ratings. The show's mix of energy, grit, and emotional depth kept it relatively strong through the second season, finishing in 25th place. But the momentum didn't last. By season 3, it had slipped to 33rd, and in its fourth and final season, finished tied for 36th. The shift wasn't just about the show, it reflected television itself. Audiences were trading cynicism for comfort, turning to lighter fare like Chips, Heart to Heart, and The Love Boat. Behind the scenes, fatigue had set in. Long hours under the California sun, constant rewrites, and endless chase sequences left the cast and crew running on fumes. The 7-day production cycle, creative tension, and growing pressure from critics had worn down everyone involved. Paul Michael Glaser was eager to move into directing, while David Soul's music career was pulling him overseas. When ABC finally ended the series in 1979 after 4 seasons, it felt less like a cancellation than a release. The red and white Torino took its final ride, and Starsky and Hutch left prime time, but not the public imagination. Its impact would echo through every buddy cop story that followed. For a show once accused of pushing television's boundaries too far, Starsky and Hutch proved remarkably durable. After its cancellation in 1979, it didn't disappear. It found new life through ABC's syndication arm, which sold the series widely overseas. By the early 1980s, reruns were airing across Europe and Australia, where audiences embraced the show's mix of action, humor, and humanity. Licensed memorabilia helped keep the brand visible, especially die-cast replicas of the red and white Ford Grand Torino, which became one of the most recognizable images in 1970s television. The car's image remained so enduring that Ford later featured replicas in promotional events and fan conventions celebrating the era of classic TV muscle cars. Its cultural influence is clear. In its 50th anniversary retrospective, Forbes called Starsky and Hutch the buddy cop drama that defined a genre, crediting it with shaping the tone and chemistry that would later surface in films like Lethal Weapon and in the stylistic DNA of Miami Vice. The show's balance of grit and charisma helped establish the emotional and visual vocabulary for the next generation of action storytelling. What began as one of television's most controversial dramas ended as a defining artifact of pop culture. Through revivals, parodies, and decades of reruns, its core themes endured: trust, loyalty, and the bond between unformed heroes doing their best to a human and unforgiving world.